Chuck Beatty is back to tell more stories about his time in Scientology. 27 years, the last 7 years of his career, he was in the Rehabilitation Project Force. And then he started to speak out as a critic in 2003, 2004. On this video, we talk about when he first joins the Sea Organization and heads to Clearwater, Florida. And then we talk about the Church of Spiritual Technology on a separate subject. We think you're going to find it interesting. I hope you stick around. Here comes Chuck Beatty. We're back at Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with Janis, Gillham, Grady. How you doing today, Janis?
Good, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We've got a returning guest. You know, his first interview with us was very popular, and he's got lots of stories to tell. And, you know, we're happy to have him come back to our show. He is, you know, he was in the Scientology Sea Org for 27 years, spent the last 7 years in the Rehabilitation Project Force, left in 2003, and then he started speaking out. He's one of the original people speaking out on the internet and to the media and to professors and all that sort of stuff. And so, you know, I've known him and we've known him for a long time, but it's the first time we've had him on. Like I said, we did his first interview and now we're going to do a second one here. So here comes Chuck Beatty. Hey, Chuck, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
We're all good here. We're all good here. And we're joining the Sea Organization, and we mentioned Ned Janis, who I guess was the recruiter that was out there, and you were in Arizona at the time, isn't that right?
Yes. Ned was the flag rep at, you know, the one who relayed any of the Flag Bureau's management orders into the Phoenix org, and I'd gotten into the Phoenix org in May. So now it was coming December, and it was, and I was going full time. I was full time, full credits at Arizona State University. I was working a 45 hours a week job, and I was going to Scientology. So my schedule was tighter than when I joined the Sea Org. When you join the Sea Org, it was actually about 3 or 4 hours less per day for me. Anyways, yeah. So Ned Janis came in. Go ahead.
Well, Ned Janis, I was wondering, where have I heard that name from?
Oh, Ned and Monica Janis. Yeah.
Well, do you know that when we were on the ship, everyone on the ship had to also be an org flag officer?
Yes,
and
I loved it.
An OFO. And that's where we were assigned an org, and we communicated with the staff, and their reports would come to us. And, you know, it's just kind of get another way of information in. And I was the org flag officer for Phoenix org.
Oh, good. So Ned was your guy. He was your guy.
Yes.
You got all your reports and everything.
That's right. So that's where it's like, oh, that's why I know that name.
That was such a good thing, the org flag officer system. And most staff hated that. I loved it. And David Hartley was the original org flag officer. LRH was having the traffic back and forth to him, setting up that whole thing. It was like a double hat as a flag management person. I loved that job.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah,
okay, so Ned Janis.
With Les and Jim. Yeah, okay, go on, Ned Janis.
Okay, so when I'm done with this, Janis, there's a question involved for you. LRH was pumping out all these orders, right? The flag land base has just gone into, like, setup. Like, you guys got there in, like, October, right? At
December. Well, October in Daytona, but December 5th is when escrow closed and we moved into the Fort Harrison.
And then it was about the 19th, like the week, like I think it was December 19th when it was the first day of courses and the students were brought over, or that exact date. It all coincided. So there was also an LRH order. That's why I even joined. Ned Janis, the flag rep, came into the internship course room at Phoenix. And of course, there's like 3 people there. So he didn't have a lot of people to talk to. And he said, LRH just ordered 100 people. And I guess he started that order maybe even a month or so before that. That's the question then, because he did that big order. He wanted 100 people in the technical training corps of the Flag Service Org training to become Class 12s. That coincided in my brain. That kind of like just blew my head, because I thought, like, this is my ticket to becoming a Class 12 and learning how to exteriorize. Because when you get up to be a Class 12, the only way you have to get the L's done on yourself. So I was like, oh, perfect. Become an auditor, become a Class 12, get the L's. And then that was my whole goal for being a Scientologist. So at that moment, I didn't really need to even be regged. It took me about 3 minutes, and then I decided to join the Sea Org as soon as I understood that order. And I think I might have asked Ned, can you say that again? Because I thought it was like too good to be true. LRH wants 100. So all I had to do was fulfill the old GO 824 form qualifications, which at that time did not exclude people who had taken that nefarious, powerful
LSD, right?
Yes, yeah. LSD. So I had taken it a number of times, so therefore I was disqualified normally. But the GO 824 allowed that to be in there.
Well, it started back on the ship where in September it was like, okay, let's find a building. We're going to move from the ship to shore, and it was called Normandy program, based off the Normandy invasion. So, and because we were all going to invade America, so Hubbard himself worked on all the different programs, wrote the programs and the projects, briefed the different missionaries and ran them on their missions to find the Fort Harrison. I talked about the coming to America, where the non-U.S. people left the ship first to come into the U.S.
I listened to that and learned something from that. So that's why I think maybe at another time you need to be interviewed more intensely, Janis, really. Once I get the questions lined up. Because I was there on the ground, and you saw the GO presence, you saw the GO whole thing going on. We were getting briefed. We got GO briefings every week. I took everything literally. So as a newbie, if somebody said something to me at those times, I followed the orders and then just did what was said. Somebody says, "You guys look too scruffy. You need to get new clothes." I went out and bought all new clothes from that old men's store, which used to be right near the Clearwater building. I did whatever anyone said. I mean, I was, it was like falling off a log being in the Sea Org. That wasn't intense for me.
Right. Well, okay. Anyway, the non-Americans came first because they came in with the reason that they were on vacation. Their ship was going into dry dock. So that's how they got in. Yeah. And they came first because they would be harder to get in if the Americans had come in first and it was blowing of what we were doing. Yeah. So got the harder people in first, and then the Americans stayed and fixed up the ship and then followed. So
I don't think anybody even second guessed or questioned LRH at that point. I mean, no, because he's the one who, okay, we're gonna roll. I mean, Mary Sue is probably the one who proposed the United Churches of Florida. We got briefed on that within 1/2 hour. So when I joined the Sea Org, I went to Los Angeles from Phoenix, and I gave away everything I owned to the org, and I gave my car away to Jim May. I mean, I was in, okay, Class 12, here I come, I mean, I'm serious. And, it took me a couple of years to fail on that one. And then I thought, okay, well, 2 years later, I thought, okay, I'll support making OTs. I thought making OTs was a legitimate, valid purpose to do for the rest of my life. And then in my study time, do as some Sea Org members did do, which was like Pierre Ethier was one of the few that made it up to got his he was a waiter. He was a waiter in the flag crew.
In the Hourglass.
Hourglass. Multilingual, very smart guy.
Chuck, let me ask you a question, okay? So you came from Phoenix and you went to Clearwater, Florida, and of course this is the Fort Harrison right here. What do you remember about seeing it for the first time? And then also, what did you do? Did you do your basic training there, or what did you do?
Because I'm coming with a group of 70 guys, and I think there were 70 some from LA, and then 25 from other parts. But LA was the big hub. We'd all been staying in the vertical sign building, they call it, the test center building, the
Hollywood Inn.
On Hollywood Inn. And that's where we all were. So we were all living there for about 2 weeks. And then, Laura Marlowe, Steve Marlowe, they were the, what do you call it? The
procurement officers.
Yeah, they were the guys. You got the little meter check from Steve. And then, it was really loose. We could come and go to the building all we wanted. There wasn't like some big security. You know who the security person was? It was Patty Updegrove, Patty Laporte at the time. She's the one I signed my CR contract with. When I walked up from Phoenix out of the plane, and I paid the taxi myself from the airport. I paid the air flight and the taxi to walk into the Hollywood building. And then Patty was the what do you call it? The security watch there. I signed my CR contract with her, and then just hung out with the other TTCers, and we did our tests, and then they got our interviews to make sure we were qualified. But I think they also checked that we were qualified back at Phoenix before we even flew. I think Ned did something or another just to make sure we had the basic quals, and then Steve Marlowe gave us the little meter check, the A to J check, make sure we're not PTS and not plants and all that stuff.
Right.
And then we all got on the plane, like all 70 of us, and then we flew. There was a plane where it was booked so that all of us, we flew to Tampa, and then we got on the bus there, and then we drove up to the front of the Fort Harrison, which is shown there. The bus pulled right up, and guess where we went? We went right into the big what's it called, the where they have the graduation today and the stage and everything.
The auditorium.
The auditorium. We went straight in there and got the geo briefing, and then that took like half an hour, and we were told we're United Churches of Florida. We are whichever religion we're from. We mind our P's and Q's, and LRH is nearby. We didn't know that he was in Dunedin. We're the lowest of the lowest New Sea Org members. So we don't know.
Well, no one knew he was in Dunedin except for those that lived there.
Okay, good.
Yeah, none of the other staff knew.
But virtually almost everybody that we newbies, and we're newbies there on December 12th or 12th. And then what day was, whatever the first day it was of services, we went on course as technical training corps students. We didn't even do it was decided not to do the EPF, just to go straight on to training. And then we had when you're at the bottom, you have to redo everything, because at Flag, the standards at that time was, we don't consider anything valid that you've ever done. You redo everything from the bottom. Right. So that's what we did. And that's
Chuck, where did you stay when you first got there? Were you in the Fort Harrison?
Yeah. Okay, so I remember the room. It's on the 3rd floor, and I don't know if you remember, some of the Fort Harrison rooms used to have little dividers between them. And it was a girls' dorm on one side of the dividers, and then there was a boys' dorm, and no bunks at the first beds were all. So we crammed in, I think, 5 beds in a dorm. No bunk beds.
Yeah, there was no bunk beds.
No bunk beds at the beginning, and then within a couple of months, we moved from the 3rd floor to, I forget, the 4th or 6th floor, and then we had like 3 bunk beds and 2 regular beds in a room.
Where did you do your training? The Tech Training Corps. Where was that located?
Okay, so that's going to be my question for Janis. Janis, like the space planning, did LRH specify what was to be done everywhere in all the buildings?
Yeah, well, that's what David and Hannah and I did. We worked out exactly where everything was going to go, and we sent it up to Hubbard for his approval. And so when everyone moved in, they already knew here's where the HGC is, down in the garden,
Cabanas.
the garden room.
Yeah.
And then all the FCCIs were in the cabanas, and the FCCI dining was the Hourglass, and the Lemon Tree was the crew.
So Janis, when you did the interview, the penthouse was up there on the top, just below that orange roof on the right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The rest, those double windows, is the ballroom and the mezzanine for the ballroom. And on the right side was the penthouse upstairs. And then on the left side was the galley for the ballroom. And I believe the crew CS was in there.
Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I remember, Chuck, and then you said that the Tech Training Corps was up there on the 10th floor in the ballroom. And that also was like, eventually, years later, it was staff study until, they moved out of the building or whatever. But yeah, that ballroom was used for course rooms, right?
Yeah.
That was going to be my question for you, Janis, because I wanted to run you through the exact moment. So the 100 TTCers, we flooded in there. Now, those two floors to the left of the LRH penthouse, like about in 77, that's where Diana had that piano and she played it. And then our course room, in the photograph that you have of me with all the people, we could hear Diana playing her piano in our course room during meal times. And all the students were kind of like going to a trance, listen to her play her piano in the meal times. Yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, because Hubbard and Mary Sue were supposed to go to the penthouse, but ended up at King Arthur's Court, United Church's extension. And so when Hubbard realized he wasn't going back there, that's when he said, have Diana move into the penthouse. So she and John were in the penthouse. When Roanne was born in February 78, they were living in the penthouse.
That's funny. You remember Gabby,
Gabby Lim.
Gabby Lim. I dated her a little bit. And right when she was being Roanne's helper. So but the first time we got there, we were up on the 12th floor and on the left-hand corner, back where that little dining room is, which you found. And that was the TR course room. And Al Lamberti was the first TR course soup that I ran into. Then when he ejected Charlie Rush, was it Charlie Rush? Or no, was it Chuck Murray became the TR course soup? After that, I can't remember. But anyway,
I think it was Chuck Murray.
Chuck became and then we moved from those two floors. In the top floor, the one that's just underneath the red roof, that was the internship. That's where Brian Livingston was sitting in his desk. And then, like you said, the CS office, David Mayo, was right on that other side. Yep. And then Dennis Ehrlich was up on the other corner.
Yeah, the cramming officer. Yeah, cramming was up there on the mezzanine. They were up on the mezzanine.
The class 12s would do their TRs in the morning because the policy the HCOB hadn't changed at that point. So when you were walking up there, you're meeting all the class 12s, or, they're giving you your technical program, your whole steps of what you're going to do. And it's really impressive. Like if we had our personnel folders and you'd look into who was writing on the various pieces of paper that are in your personnel folders, you got all these famous,
Yeah, I was going to say the class 12s in that time period, they were almost like celebrities around the base. Yes. I mean, they were Brian Livingston, Leon Steinberg, Meryl Mayo, Karen De La Carriere. Who else? There was a bunch of them.
Shafran, Linda Shafran.
Quentin Hubbard.
Yeah. And they were because they were delivering L10, L11, and L12, which were flag only services. You couldn't get them anywhere else. And that was what the public were paying. At the time, I remember it was like $10,000 for each level, wasn't it? It wasn't like $30,000 for all three, or it was a lot of money. And that was, and that was how the Flag Service Org made a lot of their money, was by delivering those L's rundowns there.
Yeah.
That was the top of the movement.
Chuck, talking about the ballroom and the auditorium, those, before we took over the Fort Harrison, those are used by the locals for prom, for weddings, and and the auditorium was a fallout shelter for the town. And when we took it over, suddenly they had no event hall, which created an upset with the locals.
Yep.
No one said, hey, you can still come in and use it and we'll do events. And we should have done that. But instead it was like, try and keep them out. And even a reporter managed to get into the Fort Harrison and take the elevator all the way up there. And this is when Greg Wilhare was the commanding officer of the Flag Service Org. And they found a dispatch from Greg. And that is what exposed us as Scientologists.
There's a couple things I want to mention about Fort Harrison, Janis, is that, you know, you guys had come from the ship, the cattle ship, and now you have this huge building, which you guys didn't even fill up all the rooms, right? I mean, people were like,
no, we didn't.
Rooms all over. But on the 9th floor, just below that, that was where the Commodore's messengers all live and LRH's staff, right? Because I remember that was the birthing rooms for the, you know, the CMO and different people.
Well, that was for those that didn't go to King Arthur's Court. Right. So those were pretty much for the Commodore's Messenger Org, it was those that were under 16 and still having to go to high school.
Right.
The rest of us were all at King Arthur's Court.
And then there was the boardroom or whatever down here on the 2nd floor. That's where
on the
mezzanine.
mezzanine.
Harmony. That's where you had the bird on the mezzanine. That's where you had Harmony, because I remember when I joined in 1976 with Miscavige, you know, that's where we would muster, would be there, because we weren't allowed to go, you know, of course, gosh, in July of 76, Hubbard was already gone, right? But there was still, you guys had like an external comm unit over in the Clearwater building, Clearwater Bank building.
Yeah, because the end of 76, I was the commanding officer, the CMO, the messengers there in Clearwater. And I remember, the boardroom, Harmony was there. I have a photograph with Harmony sitting on my head in that boardroom.
I have to tell you, my observation was there were sort of distinct layers of you messengers. There were the more adult ones, and then you kind of got a sense for these people like Kima. Franny Harris to me was a very impressive person. I looked up to her a lot right then. And then there were the junior messengers. Frankly, like Mark, your future wife, Julie, I saw her and Mark Yeager used to get into it. And I thought, like, man, these are just like little kids, you know.
They weren't even 16, right?
Yeah, they were.
No,
like,
they weren't. They were still catching the morning bus to go to high school.
Clearwater High,
like, yeah. Okay, but you still knew that you, I mean, you know, your P's and your Q's. I mean, like the GO people were real professional, but the GO people I could see were very sensitive around the CMO people. And then the clique of you CMO women, messengers, you were it. I mean, you're like, obviously, you know, on LRH's lines, you know what I mean? In later years after, I guess, LRH moved, that's when you moved. Did you guys all moved over into the Fort Harrison? Yeah. And I see you come in a bunch and hang out in front of the elevators. And I had to do lower conditions once. And I had to do lower conditions because I had risen up to be the TT technical training and course in charge. And then, and this is going to be a question for you, Janis. The 100 class 12 trainees, they became a personnel pool. They were being ripped off left, right, and center.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
And guess who was one of the key ones that guess who turned me on to the key messenger to target? John Eastman. Because John Eastman was my boss as far as the TTC command channel from CS5 down to Qual, Flag Bureau Qual, down to, and then the TTC, it was jockeying back and forth between being in the FSO or being in FB. And Tanya Burden. So I wrote up a big KR on her, and that's what got me assigned to lower conditions. I wrote up a knowledge report on Tanya Burden. I very rarely wrote knowledge reports. And I was sort of goaded into doing it because John said, I was responsible for letting the 100 sort of like vanish, and they had vanished. By the time I became the technical training corps, there was only like 20 of us left. So out of the 100.
What did Tanya have to do with that?
She was the one who was most recently ripping off the last 3 or 4 and reassigning them into the Flag Bureau, putting them on missions. But again, this is kind of when I step back, peeling the onion, looking at this from like an exterior, like way out there view. How would the real world look at it? It was only years later when I became a critic in 2004, 2005, and then interacting with the outsider critics, they made some of the most remarkable overviews. They've looked at the organization in a way that Hubbard did not. And of course, all of us following Hubbard's orders to the letter, as could be, colliding with one another, basically taking a policy, taking an order. There's going to be inevitable clashes. And this was before some of those key policies that LRH came out, Quicksilvers. Everybody was Quicksilvered out of the TTC. They just were whoosh. But a lot of, but it gets down to the basics of what is Scientology to me. When I peel the onion, I go, what is Scientology? What do you want? LRH needs class 12s, obviously. Not everybody's going to make it. Who made it? Really sharp people made it. I think if left to it, there were a few people sort of my income class who might have made it. But then most of the people who made it as class 12s were from a higher economic bracket because you're rubbing elbows with the richest parishioners of Scientology. So I don't think I really had a chance. I should have done like what Brian Livingston told me when I was first being kicked off the internship. I fought back and got back on the internship and graduated it. But when I first got up to the Dianetic internship and was kicked off, Brian said, well, I just asked him honestly, what do you think I should do? And he said, well, you probably should go to a class 4 org and become an auditor for five or upwards of 5 years. And I thought that made sense.
What happened to you on the TTC? And you just mentioned the quicksilvering and stuff. Did you get, which basically means they took you and put you in another position? Is that what happened to you, or did you actually?
No.
Like, what training did you do?
I was being.
Okay, but hold on. Did you do your Dynamics course and then you were on your internship, and then at that point did you come to tech training in charge? Or I mean, what did
in June?
What was your time on this?
June of '76. Anybody who was moving slow on their tip, there was a big ComEv or a board of review, and we all got interviewed to how our progress was. And I think by the summer, that's when Greg Wilhare was just coming on as the commanding officer. He also interviewed every single one of us who were remaining on the technical training corps to see if we really wanted the job. Because if somebody really didn't want to be an auditor and just wanted to become flag staff and do something in one of the orgs, fine. You could transfer them off that way. But with my interview with Greg, I said I'd like to be an auditor. So I sort of put on probation. And then given a time limit, like 6 weeks to get through the internship, which I was able to do. And, flag internships at that time were very, very hard to get through. I mean, you wouldn't even get the flag. Usually you flunked out within a week or two if you didn't really have it. I just barely squeaked by the internship. And then, so that's what happened. The summer I was working on my internship, getting my auditing done.
Yeah. But, I do remember in early December, 100 people showing up at the base. And, you're talking, some of these people had just walked in off the street and didn't even know what Scientology was. And they're supposed to go to the TTC. And so that's
my dorm had some vets, But again, a lot of people were rough edged for sure. I would say one out of the 6 people in my dorm shouldn't have been there at all. They were just a body in the shop, slipped in because the orders were so strenuous down to the orgs to provide people to comply with that LRH order. But then on another case, one of my roommates was Kevin Bloomquist. And in that famous photograph of LRH baptizing the baby, he's the baby.
Oh.
And Kevin then went to work for Homer Schomer and Treasury for many years.
Yeah. Okay.
I was gonna. You just reminded me, Chuck, that in June of 1976, I was just graduated high school in Washington D.C. and Greg and Sandy Wilhare were there along with Bill and Jeannie Franks on garrison mission. But then they got transferred back down to Clearwater, like you said, and Greg became the COFSO. But anyway, they recruited me to the Sea Org on the same thing of like, oh, come to Flag and be a class 12 auditor. I remember this because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an auditor. And then at that time, the personnel procurement person was Rosie Kamen. Yeah. Right. And so when I arrived in Clearwater in July of 1976, immediately, because I was 17 or going on 18, she was like, oh, how would you like to work with L. Ron Hubbard? You can be in the Commodore's Messenger org. And I went, oh, what's that? Oh, you work with Hubbard and blah, 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 blah. And I went, okay. And so that's how I ended up in the same dorm room with David Miscavige, who had been there. He joined 30 days before that. And that's how I ended up on the 9th floor. And then 30 days later, I had a problem and I left the Sea Org and went back home because which is it's covered on another show. But I remember that's why I did come, was to be an auditor in the Tech Training Corps. I just remembered that. Anyway.
Well, that's how a lot of people ended up either on the ship or at the Fort Harrison, or even at La Quinta. They were recruited to be auditors, and then they get there. They don't want to do the full-time training. It was different to what they thought. They want to do something else, and they all kind of end off going somewhere, and maybe 2% end up, going all the way. It's
and it's funny too, Janis, that people still had that purpose many years later, like when they get busted or whatever, or they were in the RPF or whatever, they're all like, I'd like to be an auditor. That's what I want to be when I get out. Well, I don't want to go back onto this other position where there's all this pressure. I'd rather sit in a chair with a pre-clear and deliver Scientology.
And going to the RPF did revitalize the purpose of some people on becoming auditors. Yeah. And it's just interesting to watch. And then you've got those who want to become auditors, but there are certain jobs like Ralph Hilton. He was in the engine room on the ship, but he co-audited all the way through and became a fully trained auditor through a co-audit on 2.5 hours a day. Yeah. There's people like that are very determined and they make it.
Yeah. That's excellent.
Chuck, in the last 2 interviews before we started, you've asked me a question about the green ball. So let me answer that. Okay. So going back to Fort Harrison and King Arthur's Court. Okay. Hubbard and messengers were at King Arthur's Court, and everyone else was at the Fort Harrison. So to have communication between the two locations, which was like a 15-minute drive, we had the green ball and the red ball, and they were vans that would take people back and forth and traffic back and forth. And so LRH would write something and he'd write on it green ball, meaning send it on the green ball over to the Fort Harrison. Red ball, it's coming back over to us at King Arthur's Court. That's what that was. It was just the van going back and forth.
Guess who needs to know that? The people in CST who are dealing with the LRH originals, and you wrote the word green ball on it, and they should actually have a little map of King Arthur's Court and the Fort Harrison, and then the green ball going this way. Was the green ball one way and red ball the other way?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So that would sort of like, what do you call it? Time, place, form, and event that on those dispatches, because I can guarantee you someday, 150
they have no
or 200
idea.
years from now.
Chuck, we did Chuck, when we were back there just past spring for the Mike Rinder Remembrance, I got Janis and we drove over to King Arthur's court, which she hadn't been to in 50 years. And I'd never seen it and didn't know where it was. And it's still there. And Janis and I walked around the building and she goes, this was L. Ron Hubbard's office. This is where Mary Sue lived. This is where our dining room was. Anyway, that video, I'm going to put up a little photograph to it here. If somebody wants to see that video, it's about 15, 20 minutes long.
Good.
But that was the location. And Janis, you hadn't been there in 50 years. And I remember when you were there, you're going like, there was nothing around it. You said, in 1976. And now it's all grown up. There's stuff all over it. Yeah.
That's right. And there was, and all the extra buildings were finished. They weren't there when we were there.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so guys are going to see a pop-up of a photograph, and it's just basically the thumbnail for that video if you're interested in learning about King Arthur's court. Anyway, go ahead, Chuck.
I'm going to watch that. I like watching all of the places because of my later jobs in the Sea Org, when like I was on the routing form project, and there's a target in there to go read read everything LRH ever wrote related to administrative routing lines. You know what that made me go down and look at the Jerry Armstrong archives that were down in the bridge building. It made me go through all of Mimeo files for flag, for the in-base Mimeo files. I mean, it was overwhelming. It took a couple of months, really, off and on.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it full time. I had to revise routing forms, plus I had to spend some time on those extra days when I could just go do all that stuff and go through. Can you imagine going through flag Mimeo files, all folders?
Yeah.
It's that OCA question, the Oxford Capacity Analysis.
Yeah.
Do you love to just leaf through phone books and timetables, rail timetables? Well, actually, I did. I actually like to do that.
Well, you know what that reminds me of? I'll tell you, Ken Urquhart, he was incredible. LRH would say, get me the policy about apple pie. And we're like, and we didn't even have the OEC volumes at this time. So we'd go to Ken. He wants the policy on apple pie. And even when we did have the OEC vols, Ken could just tell you when it was. And you're like, okay. And then you go down in Mimeo files and you go and you look for that date, November 1962, and you pull it out and take it up to him. Or else when we had the volumes, Ken would just go find it in the volumes and give it to us and we'd take it in. But I was just so amazed. I knew if I went to Ken, he would remember the policy letter.
I have a question. This is a major question. Do you think it's even possible? Well, here's the thing. You need outside world education to see how a subject is even viewed and even the history of it is even written. You need the outside perspective, but then you need people that can guide you to all of the details of what's going on at CST. Like, what are all the LRH originals about? Walking people through all the different issue types, different time periods, the different strengths and values and merits of the different issues. All of that's immediately apparent whenever you pick up an OEC volume. You see like, oh, wow, there's different levels of stuff going on here.
Chuck, for our viewers out there, when he's talking about CST, it's the Church of Spiritual Technology, and that's where the archives are of everything Hubbard wrote and spoke and lectures, and they're being saved and titanic steel plates or whatever it is in vaults underneath the ground in case there's ever a nuclear holocaust. So that's what he's talking about when he's talking about CST. It's the Church of Spiritual Technology.
Right.
When I get to that point, to the routing form project I was on, then I'm going to ask you guys, did you see that little 3x5 card, which had the CST symbol? And it was an LRH drew the CST symbol. Did you know the CST symbol?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh,
Terry would have seen it.
It's a 3x5 card, and it has the two circles with the diamonds inside. The cool ovals, interlocking ovals with diamonds inside.
Yeah, and that symbol for our viewers again is at these locations where the materials are being stored underground. So they're being put into the ground, almost like the ancient whatever, the ancient animals that you can only see from up in the air.
Yeah.
It's the same thing at the ranch at Creston, California, where Hubbard died, and also the locations. They actually put them large in the ground, and the LRH orders on it were to do that so that they could be viewed from up above, because in his writings it was like so that he could take these materials and locate them from orbit or whatever around the planet.
It's really it's kind of interesting stuff. It did make it into the media eventually, that particular thing, and they photographed it. But then if you can see
it when you see flyovers of Creston and stuff like that in the different places and stuff.
I'm going to ask you, Janis, you know this one. In the 70s, I think it was, you might have been gone at La Quinta by then, but I remember my first spouse was Sea Org Reserves chief. And there was a period there where Ann Hoblum. She used to be the FBO flag, then she became CS3, and then she became Sea Org Reserves chief, and then she became CS3. Anyways, she I forget what the point was. She I would go to her office at the end of the night to try to roused her to go home, you know what I mean, to come home after we got married. She's a workaholic, a total workaholic. She was. Anyways, she would get, the flag service or started getting these donations to LRH or to Scientology, gems. They started to get gems and diamonds sent. And Janis, you would know all of the history of the LRH presents that people used to send LRH, all the years that he received all these presents, and they just get stashed away. But then the important stuff like gems and diamonds and stuff like that. And then it'd be very important to learn from you, Janis, or from whoever else your guests know of the LRH accounts people, Vicky Palomeni, Vicky Livingston, what was the guy's name? The guy who took over.
What's your question now?
They're the ones that had to deal with LRH's money and LRH.
We did an interview with Mike Goldstein. I don't know if you saw it, but he was the original person that was taking care of that stuff on the Apollo.
Yeah, but let me bring up when we were on the ship. There was a time where they didn't know what to get LRH, and he was sent a whole bunch of money. And he couldn't accept it.
Yeah.
So he did not accept it. What he did is he set up the birthday contribution fund.
Yeah.
The BCF. And that was put as a fund so the crew, if they needed money to go back to America on an emergency to see family or whatever, they could borrow from that fund. And then money would be taken out of their weekly paycheck to pay back their debt. So like when all the musicians all went on leave at the end of 74 and they didn't have money, they all borrowed from the birthday contribution fund and went off on their leave, saw their family, came back, and through their paycheck were paying it off. I have no idea what has now happened to that money. I think it was like 60,000 comes to mind, So I don't know what happened to that money, or if it was still being paid off and people it was forgiven. But it was there at one point, and it was for the crew use.
Yeah.
Anyways, my ex-spouse, and did get these gems in from the FSO, and they did have to figure out what to do with them, whether to, barter them into cash or what. And then LRH did write that one issue about if you get a newbie millionaire Scientologist who makes a massive contribution, to not bank that, or to bank it separately, just in case they flaked out. You could give them their money back quickly, and it wasn't a big flap. I remember there was that also went on there. But then this ties in with the CST thing, which are the archives, which is is archives also a legitimate stash for LRH's wealth as well? And that would be, yeah, that'd be a question for Terry. So we'll ask Terry, did she ever catch any inkling that CST archives has also a bit of LRH's wealth for him
Yes.
there? Because that would fulfill his own, like, prior things that Hannah spoke about, because he was thinking he's always trying to find his treasure. Well, putting CST archives there with his own little stash that he's accumulated, there's going to be a certain amount which is going to be there for him.
There is a vault at CST which does have gems in it.
Okay, good. There we go. So there we go.
And Chuck, that's in L. Ron Hubbard's will. You know, when he died in 1986, was that all of his, he had like $250 million or something like that. And that it was to go to CST when they got tax exempt status. Okay. So once they got the 93 or whatever, that money would have been transferred. Norman Starkey would have had it transferred to CST. So there is money there in CST. Absolutely.
I remember that on the will, but I made a slight distinction between that and then what Hannah said about LRH wishing sort of like to find a little treasure thing, because Mission Into Time, he's trying to find stashed treasure. Cecil Rose, he's trying to find stashed treasure down there.
Yeah.
So then his solution, his own archives, he's going to make sure he's stashing stuff there. He puts his little circles with the diamonds, and then Cecil Rhodes diamonds, circles. What's the most thing in his mind? His cool cigarettes. How many cool cigarettes did the guy smoke? He's looking at that pack every day. What are the CST circles? They're the cool circle with the diamonds. They're in the ground. So to really the insider, that's the insider briefing right there.
Right.
Okay,
well, also in 77, when we were in La Quinta, he had Kimmer go and buy him some gems. And they were kept in the safe. And Kimmer actually admitted after she had left the Sea Org, she had no money. She had nowhere to go. She took a couple of gems with her because he didn't know how many there were. And she used that to restart her life.
Oh, good for her.
When Kimmer left, LRH gave specific orders to Mary Sue that the Guardian's office was to leave her alone.
Good.
And then when my brother left, his problem was that the abuse of the gold staff members, and they're always getting their pay cut and food cut and rice and beans, and he just felt they were being mistreated. And he worked out money in the pricing of the cassettes and all that kind of stuff. He worked out money and put it aside for bonuses for the crew, the gold crew, and no one would allow it to be given to him. So what he did is he had silver coins made up with the golden era symbol on them. And the night he left, he went around to every crew member at Gold and gave them a silver coin so that at least they had something. Yeah. And then he left, and then they accused him of theft. He didn't steal anything. This was money he put aside specifically for the crew that he knew they weren't going to get unless he did something about it.
I'm glad you said that, because when I later worked in Senior HCO International in the first half of 1980s, RTC, because of all the damage done in the 1982 era, did call for review ComEvs of things. I was assigned your brother's review ComEv, and I knew it was an impossible task for me. What you just said is the truth. And of course, he would be completely absolved. But then, do you want to force somebody back into an abusive group? No. But what you just said is ends the research of the ComEv that I should have done, but never got around to. It's above my level of capability to have ever manned that ComEv, been on it, or whatever.
I was going to say, if he had stashed gold right now is $4,850 an ounce. Okay, today. All right. And silver that your brother gave is over $90 an ounce today.
Yeah.
I mean, it was $18 an ounce about 2-3 years ago, and that's $90-something an ounce. So Hubbard, if he had stashed a bunch of gold stuff, you know, he's got very wealthy over the last year.
He did. In 77, I remember when we were in La Quinta, Hubbard was telling Herbie Parkhouse, who was the guardian for finance, to buy gold. And Herbie would question it. And oh my God, Hubbard would just be furious because we missed out on buying it at a lower price and the price just went up. And there's Herbie orders Queryov to buy gold. And this went on for weeks. And every day Hubbard was yelling about Herbie not buying the gold.
Yeah, but he didn't get busted for that. My first spouse did get busted for her losing 5 million of LRH's, or 2 to 5 million of his whatever his assets were. But I think it had to do with his gold when the price went down.
And it crashed.
It crashed. Okay, that's just 3 years later in my time track where I learned that. But then that's why I love talking to you and hearing all this stuff, because you know all those things that, you know, when you're a lower down person, you see the tragedy, you see the debris, you see all these people quitting, you see these people that they can't even talk about what happened, and then you can't get the truth. You have to get the top people who were there, who got informed of all of the information after the fact.
Yeah, it was a need to know operation.
All right, that's a good place here for us to end. I mean, we could go on for hours with Chuck, and we probably will in future episodes on other things. I mean, Chuck, we've only gotten you to the TTC in charge. We haven't even gotten you over to the Clearwater Bank building and eventually into the International Training Org. We want to thank Chuck for being here, and we will have him back again. And we want to promote the fact Janis's books are available. Commodore's Messenger Book 1. That's Janis right there, walking with L. Ron Hubbard on the flagship Apollo. That's the cover of her Book 1. And then this is Commodore's Messenger Book 2, and that's Janis as a teenager with L. Ron Hubbard. And in both books, she tells the story of her time on the flagship Apollo with L. Ron Hubbard. And there's lots of photographs, lots of details, lots of information. So if you're interested in getting autographed copies of the book, just go down below into our merchandise store, click on the link. In the United States, Janis will autograph it to you and send it out to you. And if they want to order it other ways too, Janis, there's other ways they can get it as well, right?
Yeah, they can just go to Amazon. The first book is in audio, so they can get an audio or they can get a soft cover. And Book 2 is in soft cover, and I'm in the middle of doing the audio for Book 2.
And then eventually Book 3 will be written, which covers Clearwater and things like that, right, Janis?
Yeah, it does.
Anyway, if you're interested, go down below, click on our merchandise store. You can order it, and we'll send it out to you. Please subscribe to our channel. Rock slam that like button. Hit that notification button. That way you know that when videos come through, you know when the next one's up, so you can watch it. And we appreciate the support on that. Also, if you've got any questions or comments about what we've talked about, or for Chuck definitely answers all of the questions that he gets, and he does it in detail. So if you're interested in asking any questions, go down below. We really appreciate that. And then finally, if you want to support our channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link in the video description. Just click on it. It's just a way to support the channel. We have minor expenses, but it definitely does help when we get donations from that with the Buy Me the Coffee. So anyway, we appreciate all the support that we get from people. That's the show, people. Have you guys got anything else you want to say before we end it here?
See you next time.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Until next time. Bye-bye. We'll see you.
Bye.